So, good day everyone. Good day, sir. I am Gemma Busayong and I will going to discuss to you about content and narrative. So, first, let's define what is content. So, content is both an information and communication. This is the sum total of freshness, readability, relevancy, and usefulness of the information presented and also the manner in which it is presented. So, visual content is composed of five elements, and these are the tension, entertainment, education, micro interactions, and call to actions. So, these visual content elements ensure that even the seemingly small and discrete aspects, such as the movement of objects, the page dynamic adaptations, provide a good experience for the viewers. So, content involves an organization and conveyance of the figures in an image. Narrative can be implied or identified in a visual text by devices such as first, the arrangement of iconography. So, what is iconography? Iconography are those visual images and symbols used in a work of art or the study or the interpretation of these artworks. And second is the use of perspective to provide essential focus, such as the use of colors, shapes, angles, the light, and etc. So, for now, let's just focus on the use of light. Let's focus on the use of light as a perspective. So, the use of light structures the reading of the narrative because primarily lighting draws attention to a particular features in a text and ensure we make sense of the images. So, this is an important perspective because light dictates the subject of an image. So, it is the light who dictates what's the main focus or the main subject of that image. So, we have here three different kinds of lights. And first, the bright colors. So, bright colors create a light, possibly in a fantastical sense. Second is the dark images, which conveys melancholy or threat. And lastly, the black and white, which signals a particular aesthetics. So, we have here an image shown which conveys a distinct story possibility because of the use of the light because of the light because by its use of light, yeah, by its use of light. So we have seen here the two men having their eyes closed. This, along with the title Commuters, insist that we can see them not as being at rest, but as frozen in motion. So they are commuters, and therefore they are neither dead or in prayer, in which the closed eyes might imply, but probably sleeping due to being tired from work, and most likely on a relatively long trip or using public transport. So they are, in short, has nothing to do, little to look at, and no reason to stay awake, and their best solution for that time is to fall asleep in this image. Then let's continue. We have here a second image entitled Commuter B. So if we had first look at this image, by the location itself, we can say that it is also in a public transport. Yeah, and as we can see at the face of that Kai, we can clearly imply that it is because of boredom, because of his very wary expression in his face while holding several books in his lap, we can imply that he's also on his way home from school or probably from a friend's house for a group study. And let's move on to the third image. The third image conveying a message that an older woman or a grandmother is with his grandson or with the man, which probably on a trip, happily and enjoying their trip using a public transport. Yes. Second, so first we have those use of in order to convey and organize the content of the image. First, by the use of the iconography, arrangement of iconography, and the use of perspective. Then second, we have this expressive movement. So it is another way of organizing and conveying narrative in a visual image. For example, with a smile, hand extended, these expressive movements included smile, hand extended in friendship, and the fist, also the fist raised in anger. These are the expressive movements. Then we have here Ernst Gombrich, which is one of the world's best known art historians. So Gombrich described those expressive movements as the first obvious appeal to empathy in images, because that is what the audience most likely to to see first by looking at the image. So he describes a number of ancient works which express physical action through the positioning of the body and limbs, and also express a mood such as a smile, a look of fear or sorrow, and also an anticipation. So according to him, we can read the emotion of a work by the context and the content. So as we can see in this picture, let's go back to the second picture earlier, the commuter B. So as much as we have assumed that the man in this picture is bored because of the look on his face, yet we cannot know this for certain without knowledge that comes from the outside world or outside the world, from the outside world of the image, which is we might equally have read the character commuter 2 as depressed or irritated or frustrated or just sad. Of course, in the first image, the commuters, without the title, we have validly read the two men as having, if we cannot read this one, the title, we can clearly or we can imply that these two men are having their heads down for prayer, or they were literally drunk. Unless, in order to know the real story of such images, we should know the people in the image or have its meaning anchored by a caption or a text or the other side of the image in order for us to know the real story, but we cannot be certain that we have read the narrative accurately. And the third one is by using figures and techniques in order to organize a narrative in a visual text. So visual text also use figures and techniques to convey stories through conventions known by most people in a society. So this provide deeper meaning and help our imagination to visualize situation in which we can conclude that the story itself could directly or could direct the reading of the image. So what is involved in is a relationship between the known story and the produced image, which narrative theorists term respectively as fabula and Josette. So fabula is an actual sequence of or perhaps imaginary events as they occurred, while Josette is only the representation of those events in a text. In terms, Fabula and Josette describe two different aspects. Yes, these two terms, Fabula and Josette, are two different aspects of timeline of events in a narrative. So the fabula of a story is the sequence of events as they are experienced in a world of the characters. So in contrast, Josette is the sequence of events as they are presented to the reader. So it is often difficult or impossible to identify the Josette in a visual text with a certainty. But if the fabula or the story is well known and sufficiently indicated in the images, then there will be an intertext to provide a framework for reading. This doesn't mean that every reader will get it right. Of course, images tend to be more anecdotal or dramatic than narrative. And of course, it evoke rather than tell a story. So, though anyone who knows the convention of figures used should understand the meaning of the sign within its context, there is always the possibility that meaning will be mislaid. So, from this one, we can clearly identify or we can clearly imply that content of a narrative or visual narrative is important in order to know what the image wants to convey. So according to Jacob Agam, there are two distinct languages. First is the verbal which separate people, and the second is the visual which understood by everybody. And that's all. Thank you.